Howdy, and welcome to another expert interview, this time with Peter Andrastek from Evangelical Catholic, also known as EC. Peter's worked in adult formation in the church since 2003. He holds a master's degree in Pastoral Theology from Ave Maria University. Now, his experience includes preaching retreats, teaching theology and adult catechesis courses, being a guest lecturer at seminaries, and giving presentations and trainings for numerous parishes, dioceses, movements, and institutions in the church. He also has articles published in Notre Dame's Church Life Journal. Currently, Peter advises a team that serves over 110 ministries around the world, including dioceses, parishes, and military bases. He lives in Wisconsin with his wife and 8 children. Now, this was a great conversation. We got into it starting to talk about small groups and ended up talking about personal apostolate, which really is connected to small groups, but in a way that maybe was unexpected. Wonderful conversation with Peter. I know you're going to enjoy it. So sit back, give it a listen, and you're going to have a good time learning from Peter. Well, welcome, everybody. Happy you're joining us again. Today we got Peter from Evangelical Catholic. Peter, say your last name for me so I don't mess it up.
Andrastek.
Andrastek. See, I would have done it. You know, in Texas, I can say things wrong and just say, well, that's how we say it in Texas. So, But I didn't want to pull one with your name because everybody mispronounces my name too. Well, thanks for joining us, Peter. Peter, tell our viewers a little bit about, your role with Evangelical Catholic and how long you've been there and all that jazz.
Sure. So, first of all, the EC, we're an organization that's based in Madison, Wisconsin, but we've got people who live and work out of all sorts of other places. What we do is we partner with ministries and we work with the ministry staff and we form and train them to form and equip the laity for apostolate. So that's, in a nutshell, what the EC does. And my role within the EC is I'm the senior consultant. And as senior consultant, I do kind of a mixture of a bunch of things. I do a lot of conceptualization and ideation, like thought leadership. I do some content development. I do strategizing. I do some external consulting as well with parishes and with dioceses. I do a lot of internal training of our consultants. I do a little bit of fundraising, other partnership development, and I do quite a bit of like public speaking, like speaking for dioceses and things like that.
So not much, basically. Yeah, you just
it's pretty focused.
Yeah, waltz through the day. Yeah, yeah. So Peter, you and I met several years ago. Talked about Evangelical Catholic. And I know that you guys have helped a lot of parishes through the last few decades in small groups. And that's in particular what I wanted to talk about today is kind of helping parishes and dioceses, but most importantly, parishes when they're trying to establish small group ministry. I know a lot of them struggle with it and they have a desire for it. So in EC, you guys have a good history of working well with parishes and walking with them and helping them get going. Why has that been such a focus for Evangelical Catholic and for, and why is it important to these parishes?
Yeah. So in a nutshell, why small groups?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Well, small groups, overall, our focus is equipping the laity for apostolate.
Okay.
Whatever that may be. But small groups are such a universal way for the laity to get intentional and get organized with their apostolate. So, small groups, a lot of transferable skills. If you can host a small group, you have, there's so many transferable skills to any kind of apostolate. And, you're basically gathering a group of people in your circle of influence, into your living room or wherever you are to have intentional conversations with them. That leads to all sorts of other things. So small groups are really powerful because of the flexibility, the nimbleness, and the transferability and just the universal scope of what they are. It can be a guy's group, a ladies group, a dad's group, a mom's group, young adult group, couples group, you name it.
Yeah. And through the years, I'm thinking about this. I've been in numerous different kinds, married couples group, young adults group, men's groups, Bible studies, and other things like that, co-ed and not. And I'm thinking to myself, there's a lot of different sizes to this. What do you think the optimal size for a small group is?
Yeah, well, a couple ways to answer that question. I guess the shortest and simplest way to answer that question is, 5 to 7, 5 to 7, including the host, the leader, whatever you want to call that person. Typically seems to be pretty optimal. Because if you got a day where, a couple of people can't make it, it's not awkward,
Yeah.
But it's also a size that's really kind of optimized for the greatest amount of like participation from everyone. No one gets kind of like lost. Mm-hmm. But some of that is going to depend also on a person's individual charisms or their social skills, the size of their living room, things like that.
Yeah. So you used a phrase just a minute ago. I want to circle back to intentional conversations. Tell me what you mean by that.
Yeah. So we have spontaneous conversations with people about various things throughout the day. Mm-hmm. And there are, every opportunity that we have to interact with people is an opportunity for spontaneous apostolate. Mm-hmm. But intentional conversations are conversations that you put some thought into, some intentionality into it beforehand, and some prayer. So you could say prayerful thought or thoughtful prayer. Mm-hmm. And so you have, I don't want to say an agenda, but you have kind of a thrust behind it. And so, and that ranges, and at its most simple level, you have the intention of just getting to know someone better or just getting to know a few people better. Mm-hmm. All the way to, on the other end of the spectrum, you have like, a discussion that you've planned out with various questions, and you want to like kind of take people somewhere with that. Mm-hmm.
Good. One of the things that we at Catholic Missionary Disciples have been doing is training a lot of folks in a process where we question, listen, assess where they are spiritually, and then respond. So I'm guessing that's really kind of what you're talking about, right? Is a process of really understanding where somebody is and having a conversation to try to move them forward. Is that really what you're trying to, or am I reading too much into that?
Yeah, it involves that. Part of the formation that we provide is helping people to understand various thresholds of ongoing conversion.
Yeah.
Like whether someone is, past that threshold of trust or, curiosity, openness, that whole thing. But then to be able to contextualize that either within a one-on-one individual conversation, whether that's spontaneous or planned out, but then also in a small group, when you've got a group of people and you're working your way through, some scripture passage over a period of time, or some book over a period of time, to be able to recognize kind of where people are and be able to respond appropriately. And help people to kind of move along in their spiritual journey.
Yeah. So I think we're on the same page here. So tell me, if I'm thinking back about parishes, a lot of them struggling with small groups. And I think really what it comes down to is a lot of Catholic leaders have never really had community. And when I'm talking about community, I'm talking about, we could use that word intentional again, right? A community of believers who are walking together for a purpose, and they know what it is, and they're trying to move forward in their apostolate, in their prayer, in their own spirituality, all these other things, right? In virtue. And I think that small groups are one method of doing that. And a lot of people long for that community. Do you think it fills that gap for community when small groups are done right?
Yeah, I do. I think we tend to distinguish at the EC between, just again, very generally speaking, between two different kinds of group experiences.
Okay.
So on the one hand, we talk about mission community or missionary community. Yeah. And on the other hand, we talk about like small groups as an apostolate.
Okay.
So think of it in terms of the difference between inhaling and exhaling. Mm-hmm. So let's start with the exhaling. So small groups as a means to evangelization, small groups as a means to some sort of apostolate. So like I said before, every aspect of our life should be apostolic in nature, right? Everything we do has an apostolic or redemptive dimension to it. Sorry,
it's all right. These are the issues with going, doing all the stuff on the web nowadays, right? It's just like the janitor walking in if we were doing this in a meeting room. So it's okay.
Actually, that was a janitor walking past.
Awesome. I named our culprit. No, and he's got a job to do, so let him go do his job, right? Yep. Thank you for your job, sir.
Yep. So there's that. There's the spontaneous everyday apostolate that we do, but then there's groups as a way to get intentional and organized about your apostolate, a way to put your apostolic or mission endeavor on the forefront of your mind and to move the needle, right? Mm-hmm. In that way, small groups may or may not contribute to like a broader sense of community within a parish. Mm-hmm. Here's why. If I'm doing small groups as some sort of an apostolic endeavor, none of the people in my group may be parishioners. None of the people in my group might even be Catholic. I might decide, over a period of time, I want to start a guys group, and it's going to be composed of, whoever is in my circle of influence. It might be guys who I'm coaching sports with. It might be someone from the office. It might be my neighbor. And it might be other school parents. I mean, when you think of a lot of, parents, a lot of the people in their circle of influence are the parents of their kids, right? Yeah, so in that case, if I want to start some kind of like a small group, that might not add anything to a sense of community within and among the parish.
Yeah.
Because that's my apostolate that I've been given from God. And so in that sense, small groups may or may not contribute. They might contribute. Let's say, for example, my small group is made up of other school parents from the Catholic parish school, right? Then in that sense, it might contribute to it, but maybe not.
Yeah.
In the way that groups can contribute to a sense of community in parish life is when you have a number of people who have received formation together, and then they're living their apostolate, they need a sense of community with other people who are doing this kind of apostolate alongside them. Mm-hmm. So if all I'm doing is apostolate, I'm just exhaling. I'm going to spiritually asphyxiate, right? Yeah. I need to inhale sometimes. And so in that sense, I need to surround myself in a circle of goodness from time to time with other people who are like me, so we can encourage each other and support each other and hold each other accountable. And in that sense, if done the right way with the right approach, and if set up in the right way, that can really greatly contribute to a sense of community. Those kinds of mission groups or missionary groups can really greatly contribute to a sense of community in the parish.
Yeah. I love your image here of inhaling and exhaling. Mm-hmm. And I got to tell you, I'm going to steal that, just FYI. I'm stealing it, because I do think it's necessary to have both and, right? Yeah. This might be part of the problem of establishing small groups is if you don't have the vision for, okay, yes, we want to be able to create a place where people can come and learn and grow and have others to walk with, but your job is also to go, right? Yep. We want to come and we want to go. And I think that what's happening is we either miss one or the other in most places.
Totally.
Yeah.
The part of the missionary community needs so those discussions, if like when I get together with a group of 3 or 4 or 5 other guys who are trying to live mission like I am, those conversations we need to discuss life, we need to discuss growth, and we need to discuss mission.
Yeah.
And oftentimes that missionary component is left out. And it's just the inhale is like almost like a myopic sort of an inhale, but there always has to be a dimension of this missionary community that redirects me out. Because if all I'm doing is inhaling and not exhaling, I'm also going to asphyxiate. If it's like if you have a flame and you just enclose that flame in an airtight container, it's going to go out.
Yeah.
So a flame needs to breathe as well.
So I'm thinking about this, and I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of, say, your average DRE or even pastor or youth minister, whatever. You find say somebody who's working at the parish, and most of them have probably not found others who are on mission as well, and that kind of group of people that they can walk with. And this missing dimension, Peter, is really something I think that's telling about where we are as a church, but it also shows the felt need that a lot of people aren't having fulfilled in those leadership positions. And therefore, because they don't have that group, they may not have ever experienced what it looks like to say, okay, let's talk about mission. Now, I'm blessed to have those kind of relationships, and I've been teaching others to do it as well. And we kind of live in a little Catholic bubble down here in College Station, Texas. But even in our local community, I'm thinking of leaders I know who don't have that. And they've expressed to me, I don't have friends that I can walk with in mission and things like that. And I've never had that. I'm going to ask, though, I want to toss it back to you. I'm guessing you've also, heard that kind of experience, but what do we do about it, really?
Yeah. So the way we do it when we work with parishes is it starts as a mustard seed. So we work with, so here's, I think sometimes, gosh, it's interesting, like how to tee this up the right way, how to contextualize this the right way. So oftentimes when people think of small groups in a parish, they think of it in terms of small group ministry. Yeah. It's like a ministry that the parish runs, and the people who are leading small groups are kind of like volunteers for the parish. And in that sense, I'm kind of like a program leader or a ministry leader, volunteer, and I'm kind of do what I'm told sort of a thing. Our approach is very much not like that at all. Yeah. The important thing from our perspective is that we're trying to equip the laity for apostolate and for personal apostolate, for individual apostolate. The decree on the apostolate of the laity says that the individual apostolate is like the center and foundation of all of the forms of apostolate. Without that at the core and at the foundation, nothing else will come to fruition. So if we're thinking about parishes running small group ministry, and like the director of adult formation or the director of parish life sees themselves as like coordinating small groups, that's really hard. It's really hard to manage. Another way to think of it is you are forming and equipping, so you're building and shepherding individuals and giving them the tools to live their apostolate well. And so from that standpoint, we start from a mustard seed. When we work with the parish, we find one person at the parish, like usually it's a DRE or a director of adult formation, director of evangelization. And we have them start with one, we call it a training group. Think of Jesus and the 12, okay? One training group of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of the most faithful, available, and teachable parishioners, people who are living lives of discipleship. Give them mission formation. So basically it's a formation of consciousness and attitudes with some skills to activate, okay? And now set those people out on mission. And the kind of like that transferable skill, that universal approach is small groups. So if you start with a group of, let's say, 8 individuals, those 8 individuals now go out and they start groups. So now this director of adult formation is now shepherding these 8 individuals in their interior life and their apostolate. And so now the director of evangelization or adult formation, they do it again with another group of 8 people. And they do this like twice a year. So every year you're forming, you're building, and then sending every year something like 10 to 20 people out in mission. So now you've got this army over the course of years. You've got this army of activated disciple makers, activated apostles, missionary disciples, workers, whatever term you want to use. They're not volunteers for the parish because they're not doing small groups for the parish. They're leading a group as an expression of their apostolate. These people need community. Otherwise, they're just going to keep exhaling and they're going to.
Yeah.
So they need some kind of community. And so the point person kind of shepherds them one-on-one, but now the point person works with them to form missionary groups among them where they can feed each other and serve each other and hold each other accountable. So basically, over the course of years, you slowly build a reality that from which you help people. Because look, if me and 5 other guys go through one of these training groups together and we experience all this conversion together and we develop deep friendships, now I'm leading my apostolate with other people. I long to get back together with those guys again because we had a powerful experience. And so I need to have a space to do that with these other guys regularly, to get back together with some of these guys regularly. And that's over time, that's how you have to. It starts as a mustard seed with like one group of 6 people or 8 people, and then another group, and then another group. And then all of those individuals, you have to start helping them to reforge those connections between and among each other. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes absolute sense because it's the same model that I personally work with in my local community. And I'm blessed to have some other men who've been doing the same thing. And we've just got a new pastor in town, not even my pastor, but at a local parish, who's a friend who has the same vision. He started doing it with men too. So one of the things, and I think here's a transferable principle for every parish, is notice that we're not launching a huge new program with 100 new small groups, right? That's not what EC does. That's not what we did, right? Now, why don't you do that, Peter? Why don't you just come in and say, okay, we're going to gather 50 great Catholic leaders. We're going to do a weekend training and then we're going to send them out. And then you go do, 50 small groups. Why don't you do that?
Yeah, because that is, well, to use a biblical image, that's like the seed that falls on shallow soil.
Yeah.
You can activate, especially if you have like a charism for activation, you can activate 50, 100 people to do something, temporary and kind of surf that wave of human enthusiasm. But what we're talking about here is personal apostolate, which is really the radiation of holiness, which is a matter of conversion.
Yeah.
And you can't simply just train someone up for apostolate. That takes ongoing formation because it takes ongoing conversion. And that sense of apostolate has to come not as an external suggestion, but has to come as an internal motivation. And that takes time. That takes weeks, months, years to slowly deepen that internal motivation to live that apostolate well. So that's a danger, actually, I think, that comes from distinguishing too harshly between personal holiness and evangelization. Yeah. Evangelization can be reduced to a program, an activity, a project, and all you got to do is train people up for that.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't work like that, because evangelization or apostolate is really the radiation or the outward communication of interior holiness.
Yeah, beautiful. And I could just sit here and say amen, 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 because you're echoing back the same kind of experience that I've had both personally and in the work that we do. And I want to think about that person who's sitting here listening to our conversation going, but I haven't experienced that. What if, I haven't had that interior conversion that's driven me to mission yet? What do you tell that person right now, Peter?
Well, first of all, I'd say, well, then ask for it, right? Yeah. Ask the Lord for it, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. And then the second thing, the person who says, I have not experienced that yet. Seek out someone who has.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And commiserate. Not in like a complainy sort of a way. What's wrong with the church? I don't have any opportunity. No, not like that, but in a way that, like, I haven't experienced this. I need help. I want some missionary community. I want to be activated. So you got to pray for it. You got to ask for the grace, because ultimately evangelization is a mystical activity. It's not simply exterior. It's a mystical activity to be an instrument of his presence and of Jesus's presence and action in the world. That implies mystical identification. So you got to ask for it, and then you have to act on it, and you got to surround yourself with people who can give you ideas and hold you accountable and encourage you. If there's like a lay movement or some sort of, if you have any kind of contact with anything like that, seek that out.
Yeah.
It
sounds to me like you're just talking about what Jesus did, right? I mean, what did he do? He didn't say, hey, let's launch a big program. He said, I'm going to take some of you guys off and we're going to go hang out for 3 years. 75% of my time is going to be with you. I'm going to teach you. I'm going to show you how to teach others. I'm going to love you. I'm going to show you how to love others. I'm going to go and heal and I'm going to show you how to heal others. Seems to me that was the model of Jesus, and we're just, needing to return to the model of Jesus.
And not only was it the model of Jesus, but it was a model of pretty much most of the saints and founders of movements of renewal. Mm-hmm. You look at what like St. Ignatius did, St. Francis, St. Dominic, St. Jose Maria. Like, this is basically what they did. You have someone who receives a call with accompanying graces to respond, and then they reach out to people who are around them mm-hmm. and draw them in, and then begin to live a certain way. Holiness is caught more than it's taught.
Yes.
And so you gotta catch the bug real bad and then get in proximity with other people.
Yeah.
Holiness is contagious, to use, pandemic language, I suppose.
Yeah. Unfortunately, if you see the book back there, Contagious Catholic, we named that before the pandemic. I promise. Anyway, it was not like some kind of bad, marketing opportunity we tried to take advantage of. It was providential, or not, however you want to look at it. It is. It's something that, we need to have people who are, in a sense, catching Jesus, right? Catching the love of God, who desire that, born out of that, I got to share this with other people, right? Mm-hmm. For me, it's kind of like a burning desire that I can't get rid of. And I think that there's a lot of folks out there who have had a similar experience, but then they get kind of bogged down when they're thinking about mission, apostolate, evangelization. Oh, it's so hard. And one of the things that parish leaders that I've found, Peter, and I'm sure you have too, is that they're not okay with being inefficient. The way we kind of grade success of a parish is by these numbers of how many groups do we have? How many people do we have coming to church? And while objective numbers are not a bad thing to keep track of, they're not the real mark of success. What do you think the real mark of success in ministry? How do we measure that then?
Yeah. Well, holiness is the mark of success in the church. But how do you observe holiness? Well, the people who are holy have kind of like a mysterious something about them, right? Mm-hmm. That on the one hand, right, intangible stuff, but a more tangible byproduct, so to speak, is an internal drive for apostolate, an internal drive for mission that translates into external activity. Mm. And so I'm not talking about like multiplying ministries. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the wrong way to interpret this is that, well, the more ministries you have at a parish, the more holy and vibrant the people are. Well, not necessarily, because people can get involved for all sorts of reasons. But apostolic holiness is really the mark, the measure of success in the church. That's right in the catechism, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah. And again, there's a variety of ways the person measures that, I guess. The best way to measure that is through personal relationships. Yeah. Like you sit down, have a conversation with someone, ask about their prayer life, ask about their family life, ask about their professional work. Mm-hmm. If they can describe with some concreteness what their relationship with God is like and how they try to live that out through the very human dimension of their life, that's how you know if someone is trying,
Absolutely. And, one of the things I've found is it's kind of a circle that completes itself. You're talking about how holiness leads to mission, but mission leads back to holiness, right?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And I've found in many people's lives who want to be holy, this is a missing dimension in their own walk with God.
Totally, it is.
Yeah. So talk about that a little bit then.
Yeah. So holiness and evangelization are really only conceptually distinct. We distinguish them in our minds, mm-hmm. so we can talk about it clearly. But in reality, they're the same thing, right? It's like I said, it's the radiation of holiness. Just like, can you separate Jesus' identity from his mission?
Yeah.
His identity is word, which is the mission. And so as the Father sent him, he sends us as the continuation of that word. Holiness and evangelization are all kind of one, right? It's the radiation. So that being said, there is a priority on holiness, but it's not a chronological priority. It's an ontological priority, meaning evangelization exists to the extent that holiness exists. Yeah. It's not like a person has to cook for a while and then at some point in the future, they can be on mission.
Yeah.
There is a temporal dimension because we're temporal beings, but really it's, as soon as the flame exists, it's giving off heat. It's just a little flame, or is it a big bonfire, right? So in that sense, holiness, there's an ontological priority placed on holiness. However, John Paul II referred to human beings in a mysterious way as we are our own efficient cause, meaning that we have a certain amount of agency in forging a new identity in ourselves. So in other words, what that means is every time I act a certain way, I forge a new identity in myself. We call that self-determination, right? Not determinism, but self-determination. The more I lie, I actually become a liar, right? Like I forge an identity in myself.
Yeah.
The more prudent decisions I make, I actually become prudent. Mm-hmm. Well, the relationship between holiness and evangelization is that the more I become apostolic, the more I live this life on mission, the more it reinforces the source of that, which is holiness.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like a long, drawn out, maybe a little philosophical way of saying that many people experience a plateau that can even slide into lukewarmness, mm-hmm. precisely because they are not being intentional with mission.
Yeah. Yeah.
And precisely. People make goals all the time, like, okay, I want to start praying for 15 minutes a day, or I want to get to mass more often. And that's all wonderful stuff, but it's like we forget about this dimension of apostolate. Mm-hmm. And in the general directory for catechesis, it lists out the tasks of catechesis. And one of the so the tasks of catechesis are kind of like the different dimensions mm-hmm. of formation. And one dimension that's necessary is formation for evangelization. What that implies is that if we leave out evangelization, we cannot grow to full maturity.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the only way to grow to full maturity is to be intentional about evangelization.
Yeah. And putting a face to this. I'm going to put my own bald face to this. I had a big conversion in college. And I remember immediately that night after getting back from the retreat where I had the conversion, I was on a hill talking to somebody who is actually now leader of a large organization. He's the chief mission officer for a large apostolate, talking to him on the hill about that conversion. And then I went to every guy that I knew and I said, my life has been changed by Jesus. So I immediately, after conversion, here's this little flame. I go out and share the little bit of flame. And I remember just how much it built in that fire. Mm-hmm. And then after that, I went and got involved in community at the church and the campus ministry. And here's what happened is that we kind of became insular, right? I stopped sharing outside of that place. Mm-hmm. And they all said, if you want to be a good Christian, here's the list, right? Here's the list. Yeah. Learn about your faith. You get the sacraments, you get involved. This is kind of the list at most parishes, right? Boom, yep. boom, 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 boom. And then you got to, if you really want to be a good Catholic, you kind of pray and you go to daily mass and things like that, right? Like one up. And I started doing all that, but mission was missing. Yeah. And for years it was missing until, and I knew something was in the back. Ends up that once I started going back on mission, it was like kickstarting everything else in my life, a few years later. And I remember it was some good people speaking truth back into my life saying, you need to share this gospel. But then I was just utterly convicted. How could I not? Right.
Yep.
And it changed everything. I'm guessing have you had a similar experience to that?
Oh, yeah. So, holiness is love, right? Because God is love. Yeah. And, what does it say in first letter of St. John? He says, how can you love God who you've never seen if you don't love your brother who you have seen, right? And so like, if I'm not being intentional about loving my brother, how can I grow in love of God? Mm. And like, when you start being intentional about evangelizing, all sorts of little things start happening. Yeah. You get, you're forced to organize your life a little bit better because now I'm getting together with this guy for a happy hour or whatever. And so I gotta budget my time better. I gotta make sure that I get my work done. And I gotta, all these, there's a ripple effect of very human things that I have to make sure that I'm on top of. It calls for greater excellence. There's also within conversations with people, I've found myself saying stuff that I needed to hear. Yes. or coming face to face with situations that I wasn't prepared to deal with. Mm-hmm. All the formation in the world, all the preparation and training in the world didn't prepare me for what I'm dealing with right now. Yeah. And being thrust into those situations forces us to have to lean on God. Mm-hmm. And trust in him and really give ourselves with a risk of failure, risk of humiliation. And so it really forces us to stretch ourselves. I don't know how many times that kind of thing has happened. And just, having even granular things like creating a budget for evangelization, I've got a big family, I got a wife, and if I'm going to be taking guys out for beer or for coffee or that kind of a thing, or if my wife and I are going to go on double dates, or we're going to start focusing on, we have to create a budget for this, Yeah. So it radiates out into all different things. And then I find myself praying for people and mortifying for people. And all of that stuff really forces me in all sorts of dimensions to be more virtuous and to be more other focused. Yeah. Which is holiness, right? That's coming back full circle. If we're not doing those things, we're missing out on all of those opportunities to grow in our relationship with God. Mm-hmm. But if we do those things, it forces us to be more like God, who is other focused. Yeah.
I thought this conversation was going to be focused on small groups, and really is focused more on, personal apostolate, which in a sense can always encompass small group, right?
Small groups are just one of the best, most intuitive ways to be intentional with your apostolate.
Yeah. I had a feeling about 6 months ago. I just had this burning feeling in my prayer that wouldn't go away. And when something goes away, it's probably from God. So then I go talk to my spiritual director, and I talk to my wife, and I say, look, I've got this growing desire that won't go away to reach more men in my neighborhood. Because the scriptures say we're supposed to love our neighbor. And then everybody comes and wants to define what a neighbor is. Okay, let's stop and think about this. We don't have to define the fact that there are people who literally live close to us who are literal neighbors, right? Those people are already automatically in the definition. So I know that, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I've got neighbors who I'm kind of getting to know. We've lived here for a couple of years. We're starting to build some relationships with folks. And so I say, okay, I'm going to start doing this. And the first couple of things just out of this. One, I invite a man who I've been building a little bit of a relationship with, and he says, no, I don't want to be in the small group. That's not my thing. What did that teach me? First of all, there's a little bit of disappointment, because everybody hates getting turned down. And I had to acknowledge that disappointment and tell the Lord about the disappointment. But then I also, it's just not his time yet, right? It doesn't mean you stop the relationship. It just means maybe it wasn't the appropriate time for him to be able to say yes to something like that. So let's build the relationship. From that, I also just put out on our general little Facebook group on, for our neighborhood, an invitation to men. And I had a guy who responded. And lo and behold, this guy's awesome. We went and got a cup of coffee, which, by the way, there are more times for coffee and lunch for guys and beer, right? Those are like the three things. You got to be doing something with guys, right? So you eat and drink something. We go get a cup of coffee. We're talking about this. He's so fired up, Peter. And we're about to start this. I got another couple of guys that I've found. We're about to start this in a couple of weeks. And what happens? Well, it's got him excited. It's got the other guys excited. It's got me excited, because what do people want? They want others. They want community. They want to grow closer. They want to have a place where they can, let their hair down if they got it, but really just talk and share in an appropriate, intentional way, to pray together, to have somebody who says, hey, you can ask a big question and not get thrown under the bus here. It's safe for you and all those other things. That's what people want. I don't think we have to overthink small groups. And I think a lot of times we do that, right? I mean, totally. So tell me how people overthink the small groups, and people are kind of just, stopping their own success in small groups that you've seen.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. It's funny you ask that, because that's like one of my phrases that I repeat is don't overthink it. A lot about small group. What are ways that people overthink it? Well, they overthink things like, can I have snacks? And this is when we kind of over programatize small groups. Yeah. Can we have snacks? Can we have beer? Can we, what material can we use? Can we use this? People overthink the logistics. Yeah, I think. And my response to that is, after I say, don't overthink it, I ask the question, what would you do with a group of friends? And then do that.
Yeah.
You don't overthink. Now, that being said, it's good to put some thought into it, especially if the group is composed of people who you don't quite know very well yet. And, you want to think through, okay, how can I make things comfortable and all? But I think people can read when something is too put on. I think today people have kind of a knack for authenticity, or people can read, they can see when someone isn't being authentic, and when they're being maybe a little bit too, when there's a lot of pretense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just be normal,
Just be normal. You know what? That is the best advice I think we could possibly have.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's your parting shot. Last thing you'd tell leaders watching this right now about, and you could talk about anything you want. Okay. You can talk about apostolate, prayer, small groups, leadership, whatever you got. What would you tell somebody in a couple minute spiel here to wrap this baby up?
Well, that's really broad.
I know. I love putting people on the spot there. They're like, oh, geez, I hate this interview.
I would say for if you're a ministry leader, okay, meaning, you work for a parish, you work for a campus ministry, maybe you're a priest, maybe you're employed pastoral staff. If that's who if that's who I'm giving this little tidbit to, I would say, it's not about the small groups.
Yeah.
You are not running. It's better to not run, generally speaking, there's exceptions to this, but better to not run a parish small group ministry. It's better to have a ministry of building and shepherding individuals and equipping them for apostolate. Basically empowering people in their secular apostolate, because that's the lay mission, the lay vocation is to be secular, to live in the world, to empower people to live apostolate to their circle of influence.
Yeah.
It's very freeing, because maybe to rephrase it, another angle is the first step in renewing your parish is forgetting about your parish. Forget about all the ministries, forget about all the programs, forget about all that stuff, forget about the people who are the lukewarm bodies in the pews, forget about the people who aren't in the pews, forget about trying to get people into the pews, forget about all that stuff. Instead, focus on the disciples who are already there and pour into them to activate them in their apostolate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not for the sake of building the parish, but for the sake of helping this individual to grow in apostolic holiness, which is their vocation. In doing that, you can become more and more confident that Bob and Susan and Marissa and Tad and, all these people, they're going to be the ones to reach the people, the lukewarm bodies in the pews. They're going to be the ones to reach the people who aren't in the pews. You're focused on these individuals. So that's what I would say to ministry professionals, to pastoral leaders. Forget about the parish. Focus on individuals. And in doing that, in focusing on your circle of influence and systematically building your circle of influence, you'll reach all those other areas of concern.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I love it. And that's really what EC is about, right? So, So if somebody wants to learn more about Evangelical Catholic, what you do, how to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Yeah. Best thing to do is just go to our website, evangelicalcatholic.org.
Okay. I remember when you guys, decades ago, when you guys were kind of a baby organization, and the pushback from the name Evangelical Catholic was kind of fierce. So I'm glad you've kind of normalized it, because it helps with language, right? We're supposed to be all evangelical Catholics, right?
Yeah, it's a bit of a redundancy even.
It is. It's like Catholic missionary disciple, right?
Yep.
There you go. It's the same deal. We have redundant names at our organizations.
That's right.
Peter, thank you for joining us. It was wonderful talking to you. And I'll make sure people have a link to your website and all your resources. God bless.
Thank you.